here live and also to the people joining us over radio at 92.1 or WPTSradio.org. My name is Tom Visco. I'm the editor-in-chief of Pitt Political Review and the news director at WPTS, and I'm actually very, very excited to be putting this on for Pitt's campus. As you all know, we have a mayoral election coming up soon. That's why we're all here. Before we begin, I just have a few thank yous to say. Getting this debate together on Pitt's campus has been an extraordinary effort by several undergraduates here on campus. I couldn't do it without Greg Weston, the general manager at WPTS, the entire PPR WPTS staff of all undergraduates who helped me organize this, and my assistant at WPTS, Matt Singer, was also integral in putting this debate on. So again, thank you all for joining us, and with that, we're going to pass it to Jim O'Toole and Amy Friedenberger, who are moderating the debate. Have a good one, everyone.
First and foremost, I just want to thank the university for this invitation. It's a complete honor. I definitely appreciate it. I want to apologize to each and every one of you, and also to the city of Pittsburgh, for my actions. I should have been drinking and also got behind the wheel of a vehicle. It was senseless, it was reckless. It's not who I am. And this particular debate, I feel that it's fitting for me to excuse myself after this because I have to mentally and emotionally regroup. I need to spend this time in prayer with my wife and with my children. And also I'm gonna have to take responsibility for my actions. So next week I will be going to the court and I will plead guilty to the charges because leadership needs to be held accountable for his or her actions. So with that being said, I thank you all. Have a wonderful evening. God bless you.
My grandfather came from a small village in Italy. They didn't have running water, they didn't have electricity. And he settled in the town of Carnegie in 1921. He worked in a mill, and he spent 40 years there with a second grade education. Soon after my grandmother came over, she had no education. They raised their family during the Depression. My mom was the first person born in this country. On my other side of the family, my grandfather, Guy Peduto, worked at the mill across the river, J&L, and that's where he died in 1950. His dad went to college on a GI Bill, and he became a teacher, later a salesman, and then, before he passed away, doing what he loved, teaching. And my mom raised 4 boys. The Pittsburgh that my grandfather came to is gone. It's not about looking back and looking in the past. There is a new Pittsburgh that's emerging, and for almost 20 years now, I've had my hand directly involved in creating it. The district that I've represented for 12 years and 7 years before that as chief of staff has been the transformation of Western Pennsylvania, and it needs to expand. It needs to go beyond the borders of Oakland and beyond Eds and Meds and start to affect how we revitalize our city neighborhoods. We have to invest more in people than we do in brick and mortar, and we have the ability to do it. The transformation of Pittsburgh has begun, but there's still one part of it that hasn't caught up: city government. This campaign is about making sure that the city of Pittsburgh enters the 21st century and that the city government enables all the wonderful things that are happening to continue.
Richardson, Godspeed. None of us are perfect, and we hope things work out for AJ. It's an honor to be here tonight, and I first and foremost want to compliment the students at the University of Pittsburgh for your interest in government. We hope someday all of you will be up here on this stage and will be future leaders of our city, our region, and our Commonwealth. I'm Jack Wagner. I live in Pittsburgh. I live in the neighborhood of Beachview with my wife, Nancy, and our 2 children. We have a daughter, Sarah, 18, who's a freshman in college at Bethany College, and our son, Lucas, 24, and has almost a 4-year degree. I'm running for mayor because I love this city, and this city can do better. And yes, Bill Peduto is right in saying the city of Pittsburgh has problems. It has serious problems. Serious fiscal problems, serious structural problems, many issues facing our city that have not been addressed by city government. I've been your Auditor General for the last 8 years of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, fixing problems at the state level. FIA, the Pennsylvania Higher Education Assistance Agency, putting that agency back on track. A recent audit of the Turnpike Commission that identified many serious problems. I want to fix those problems in the city of Pittsburgh, and I'd be honored to be your mayor. Thank you.
Good evening, and I too want to thank the students of this, and I want to thank you all for being here. I'm running because unlike the other gentlemen on this stage, I'm not a historic and institutional politician. I've been a state rep for 10 years, and for 10 years we have fought against politics as usual. And when I entered this race, I made a promise to the citizens who I talked to that I was not going to campaign, and promised me that I could not deliver. This city does have serious problems, but it also has some wonderful things. And at the basis of that wonder are the people. So we want to talk to you about a vision that will be a future of the city that will include you in your aspirations, that will make sure all communities, all people, no matter what your walk of life may be, has true opportunities, that your voices are heard, not only heard, but are actively acted on in our government. We have talked about our experience over the last 2 years, and we want your help to push forth 4 years as your mayor to make sure our city really includes a prosperity for all. Thank you.
Big difference. So I congratulate the mayor on taking a good first step. If you look around the state of Pennsylvania, you're going to find something very much in common. And whether it's Meadville, or it's Allentown, or Bethlehem, or Pittsburgh, or Washington, you're going to find older communities, poor communities that don't have the money to pay the bills. And there's a reason for that. In those older communities are where the large nonprofit institutions are, and around it are areas of prosperity, where newer communities have been built out. If we are ever going to be able to get to tax fairness in the state of Pennsylvania, there's going to have to be a system where the older communities like Pittsburgh and Meadville and others are able to share in some of the costs. The mayor's proposal is based on a Supreme Court decision that happened last year. And in that decision, it was determined that there's 5 criteria by which a nonprofit should be judged in order to say if it's a public charity. Is it operated like the way nuns would operate? No matter if it's a hospital, a university, or any other nonprofit. What I don't agree with the mayor is that he only picked on UPMC, that he chose one. Because if you're talking about tax fairness, that same metric, that same measurement should be applied to all. Whether it is the University of Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon University, or any other nonprofit. And if they can prove the HUB test, then they continue as a nonprofit. If they can't, then they have to be able to pay to the host municipality. But the largest solution comes by treating host municipalities that host these in a new way in Harrisburg. And I'm happy to have joined with 29 other cities with a solution to that.
There's a big difference between UPMC and the University of Pittsburgh, both of which are nonprofits. The UPMC had a $351 million profit last year. I consider UPMC a profitable nonprofit. I do not consider the University of Pittsburgh a profitable nonprofit. And as a matter of fact, 90% of the nonprofits are not profitable. Should we challenge those nonprofits that are classified nonprofits that are profitable to pay more to the city of Pittsburgh? You're darn right we should. But we should identify who they are. And yes, the mayor of the city of Pittsburgh had every right to challenge UPMC on their nonprofit status for the very reason that they are so profitable, and they do benefit from many services that the city of Pittsburgh provides, some of which are not provided to the University of Pittsburgh. The University of Pittsburgh has their own policing unit. The gentleman in the back of the room is employed by the University of Pittsburgh. UPMC does not. So if I'm fortunate to be mayor, I will look at the mayor's challenge at UPMC and continue it if they're not meeting the guidelines set up by the nonprofit and the laws of Pennsylvania.
So let me begin by saying the court challenge could take many, many years to work through. And we always want to look at our legal possibilities. With that being said, I do also respect the fact that without a UPMC or without the University of Pittsburgh, we would not have prospered and weathered the recession as we have. So we have to respect that in our region and figure out ways to work with our large nonprofits. Now let me say something else as well. Our large nonprofits and large employers should respect the workers, and the way that they treat their workers should be an issue in how we talk to them. But I would have taken a different route. I would have used some negotiation similar to what the mayor did do successfully with them, the Pittsburgh Commerce, and also talk to them about ways to contribute to support the things that we need. There's an innovative process that we have proposed, social impact bonding, which really would take the nonprofits like a UPMC or the large foundations and say, we know you utilize a lot of our public safety processes, and so instead of you paying directly into a general fund where you know not where the money goes, we can leverage your resources into something that supports our pension obligation or the support of our public safety in our budget, where we don't have to directly spend our tax dollars, but we can use yours to leverage that obligation. So with that being said, I would have taken a different route than the legal one. And as your mayor, I think we can figure out ways, even with that legal obligation out there, to work with our large nonprofits. Well, first, as a member in the General Assembly, I worked on the property tax reduction special committee to look at how we can help townships, municipalities, and cities support their rising costs of public property taxes. And one of the things we came up with is giving local municipalities the option with more taxing authority. So the payroll tax expanded to nonprofits was one of those options that we're talking about. But I'll tell you from my history, unlike these other gentlemen on the stage, I actively have relationships in Harrisburg, and I have a keen sense of what can happen in Harrisburg. I gave you the first type of process the social impact bond, which is a new idea, something that we could use to get at our increased revenue. And what I would be looking for is really the obligation, because I think the pension is the biggest financial obligation for our city that we need to figure out going forward. And so I would try to use that to leverage their support for our obligations for the pension. Thank you.
If they're not meeting the standards of the law, it needs to be pursued. Mayor Ravenstall indicated that the city of Pittsburgh has lost approximately $20 million in property taxes in recent years, going back approximately 5 years. The school district of Pittsburgh has lost revenue also. So we need to be concerned that the school district of Pittsburgh cannot challenge UPMC because they signed an agreement based on the Pittsburgh Promise, which incidentally is a great program and one that I fully support. If we were not successful legally, obviously you would want to negotiate as best you could. One of the proposals that I have talked about, and I believe one that Controller Michael Lamb, who has endorsed my candidacy, has talked about, getting UPMC to pay for some of the paramedic services that the city provides. So any items should be on the table that could be negotiable to bring additional revenue into the city of Pittsburgh.
So remember that old Pittsburgh I was talking about? You know, he used to run the hospitals, nuns. Nuns don't run the hospitals anymore. There needs to be a statewide solution to this. The group I was talking about, the Pennsylvania League of Municipalities, formed a group called Core Cities in Crisis. Great name, right? And they pulled together 29 leaders from across the state. I was fortunate to be one of them. What we realize is that if we go to Harrisburg by ourselves as the city of Pittsburgh, we can expect nothing. But if we join with others from around the state, where they have these things called Republicans, we can put together a coalition to be able to actually get things done in Harrisburg. The other part of it, too, is an opportunity. Because right now, our county executive, who's here, Rich Fitzgerald, has looked at every single nonprofit in the county and is checking them for that HUP test that I spoke about. When we talk about taxation, when we say someone's being unfair, we shouldn't use an unfair practice to just pick one. We should make sure that if we're going to do taxation and talk about fairness, it should be a fair system that the county executive has proposed.
The Port Authority of Allegheny County is very important, especially to the urban core of the city of Pittsburgh. So there does need to be a partnership working with the county, working with the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania provides 60% of the operating revenue on an annual basis to the Port Authority. So the Commonwealth should have representation on the board of the Port Authority. I also support Senator Scarnati's proposal for the city of Pittsburgh to have representation on the Port Authority. We need to work together, but I'll tell you, the mayor needs to take a leadership role on certain issues, such as expanding the light rail or expanding transit. First off, we need to lobby in Harrisburg, and I have done that for 20 years on both sides of the aisle, respectfully with Republicans and Democrats, to get more dedicated revenue for the Port Authority. We need to expand the light rail or mass transit to guess where? Right here in Oakland. Right here in Oakland, from downtown to Oakland and points east. Not to the North Hills, as we recently heard. The two job centers in our city are downtown Pittsburgh, Oakland. This is the educational center. This is the cultural center. This is the medical center. It only makes logical sense that the mayor must be the strongest advocate to connect Oakland. And incidentally, it would make it easier to go to Pitt games at Heinz Field. Thank you.
Well, first I want to thank Jack for promoting the expansion and the accessibility in my district, because I represent both downtown and Oakland, and have done so for 10 years, and have also advocated to make sure our transit system is a world-class system, but it's not. And so before we start talking about the governance, we need to talk about how we recreate and re-envision our transit system so it's a real regional asset and not one that is disjointed. And so when we talk about how we re-envision it, I do believe the city of Pittsburgh should play a vital role. We should actually provide some resources for the role that we want. And I think I have a solution for how we can do that. But we should imagine the board to be really a southwestern Pennsylvania board, where our other counties share in that decision-making, kind of like a Southwestern Planning Commission, which I also serve on. Because if we're going to really advance and promote this region, we have to do so as a region. And the transit system has to reflect that thought. So, as your mayor, I would not only advocate, but I would do something that Philly does well. The mayor is up there every several weeks advocating and pushing for the things that make sense for his city and his county. And that is the exact same thing that we need in DC and in Harrisburg, an active, involved, visionary leader who wants to see this region grow. Thank you.
Mr. Premier, I apologize, but before you weigh in, I have some FCC hygiene to take care of. Because we're live, we want to welcome you once again to the WPTS Radio Mayoral Debate, broadcast live from the O'Hara Student Center in the University of Pittsburgh on 92.1 WPTS. And it's online at WPTSradio.org. by closing on Mr. Peduto.
Jim, you got a great radio voice. I can't answer this in 90 seconds, so I'm going to try and do my best. You know, I'm hesitant to look at reform from those in Harrisburg that have been trying to cut transit's funding. I'm hesitant to really think that they're being genuine when they talk about restructuring boards when they've been the ones that look at it as a luxury and not a critical component of a 21st century city. What I view it as is we need to expand transit. We need to look at it regionally, as Jake was saying, and create Sparta like they have SEPTA out in the east. We need to look at it throughout Allegheny County and create a spine line that was proposed before that goes north, south, east, and west, and then use buses to get you to that line and take you into the city. We push air from other counties in, and we drive the people back out. We take people in buses that aren't even efficient systems. We have the ability to run a modern system. We just waste it because we compete against ourselves. When I look at the city of Pittsburgh, I see abandoned lines, old rail lines that used to connect the old economy that could be used to recapitalize on the new economy. Look right out on Forbes Avenue, the railroad that goes through down to Hazelwood and down to Lawrenceville. It's hardly used anymore. You put a commuter rail on that, and all of a sudden, all this development that's happening right here in Oakland will start to happen in communities that haven't seen any development, like Hazelwood in that part of Lawrenceville. We need to be able to create an intermodal, multimodal system, and it needs not only to happen in the city and the county, but regionally as well.
Infrastructure is important for Pittsburgh, and what do you see your role being in improving the city's bicycle safety and infrastructure? Start with Mr. Wheatley.
First of all, I'm a runner, avid runner, and so I support not only bikes, walking, trails, all these things that get people moving and active, because in order to have a successful growing city, we need to have healthy people to take advantage of the things that we do here. And so, as a runner, I run through various parts of the city. And some neighborhoods have done a very good job of advancing that activity and making special lanes and passages that are suitable to not only walkers, but those who ride bikes. There are other communities that haven't developed that way. I think as a mayor, part of what we've talked about as a mayor is to make sure the things that we know are successful in creating healthy and vital communities, we do it throughout our neighborhoods. And so I'm definitely a supporter of all those transit ways to move people and to have people enjoy their quality of life. But we need to make sure that it's dispersed throughout our city so that if you're in Shadyside, the Hill District, or Hazelwood, you can enjoy safe, nurturing, and easy accessible bike trails or bike passages, or walking trails and passages, or driving through beautiful neighborhoods. So we certainly will be an active participant in making sure that we continue what has been done, because I also think we've done a great first step in doing that, but we haven't connected it throughout our city to all of our neighborhoods. Thank you.
You might be surprised I'm not a runner. I'm a pretty fast walker. Bike Pittsburgh is an organization that started about 10 years ago. There were a lot of good organizations that started about 10 years ago. It really started because foundations started saying, hey, we got to catch up with what's happening around the rest of this country and the rest of this world. And Bike Pittsburgh started to put together plans. In the past 3 or 4 years now, the city of Pittsburgh, through the Department of Public Works, has been implementing those plans. And you see them as you drive around the city. But we're only at the cusp of actually starting on the full implementation of a complete streets strategy. And what a complete street says is that our streets are made for automobiles, cyclists, walkers, fast walkers, some runners. They're made for every type of transportation. We're not there. We're not close. I mean, we're finally getting countdown signals. Other cities started it 20 years ago. There is a necessity of upgrading our major corridors. And if you look out on Fifth Avenue, I don't know, some of you have been around for a while. Fifth Avenue, we have people killed. and I got to work with OTMA, the Oakland Transportation Management Association, and we started doing upgrades, and then we re-signalized the lights. And then we went to Forbes Avenue, and we started doing the same thing. Instead of painting lines, we used tape, and we used lights to make it reflective. You know what? The number of pedestrians that got hurt went down to 0. We need to do that type of a strategy in other parts of the city. It's a possibility, it's been done right here, and it needs to expand.
You may be able to tell from my gray hair, I've been around for a while. 20 years ago, I was on Pittsburgh City Council, actually for 10 years. 6 of those years, a council member at large, and the last 4 as council president. And we achieved many great things at that time and initiated the riverfront trips that you see today. And I have to compliment Mayor Murphy because he continued that initiative. Today in Pittsburgh, we have 32 miles of riverfront trips, maybe more than any city in America on the waterfront, including the cities that are on the Atlantic and Pacific coast. So we have achieved much in the beginning for walking, for running, for bicycling. And we need to continue that. What you see at Bakery Square, where you have the bicycle slots where you can rent a bike, there's an initiative in place for that to be in 50 locations across the city of Pittsburgh. As mayor, I will not only encourage that to continue, but I would like it to be the best in our country. This needs to be a bicycle-friendly city. It needs to be a friendly city on all modes of transportation. That improves our quality of life. That distinguishes us from other cities. It must be a top priority. Breaking news, the ordinance was thrown out today. My lawyer looked at that ordinance, and as everyone knows, Councilman Peduto challenged both myself and Controller Lamb in terms of the use of our money based on the ordinance that was passed by the city of Pittsburgh 3 years ago. The ordinance was not a good ordinance. It had holes in it. I think the intent for campaign finance reform is the right thing to do. If I'm fortunate to be mayor, I'm more than open to work with members of council to pass a campaign finance reform bill. What you should know, though, in the judge analyzing the ordinance today, basically said that this ordinance is unenforceable. And my lawyer, Ed Friedman, who is a very competent, qualified lawyer, put forth an opportunity to the judge and to Bill's counsel as to whether or not we would like to move forward under the intent of the existing ordinance. And the response was no. So we are living in the past in terms of the old ordinance, hopefully with the intent and the commitment by all to have campaign finance reform in the future. And I support that.
Well, first, I would propose that Jack and Bill give all their money back, and we all start from scratch. Seriously, I think that we've said all along that this was part of what makes people turn off from politics. Money has influenced politics for far too often, where the people's voice never really gets to shine through. And so we have made the commitment from day one, entering the race, that there are rules that we have to abide by, and we will abide by the same rules as all of the candidates in this race, because we think that's a fair way of doing it. Of course, I was joking earlier, but I do believe that we should have some constraints around the level of financing that comes into any candidate's coffers. But I'm also a realist, And so what we hope to do is make this campaign not about those things of finance, but we make it about the future and what it means to the citizens of Pittsburgh. And the only way we can do that is that we have an engaged conversation around ideals and vision. And I'm hoping that no matter how much money comes into this race, that we will have that opportunity to really get at the heart of what matters for people in this city.
When I'm done with politics, hopefully in a number of years, I want to look back at my times on council, and there will be a legacy. There'll be a legacy of green initiatives. Are you listening, Jim? Is you reading stuff? It will be a legacy of financial responsibility and helping to keep the city out of bankruptcy, economic development that's happened in this East End with transforming Pittsburgh, and government reform. And one of the keystones of government reform is campaign finance reform. The campaign finance reform in the city of Pittsburgh came through a bill that I proposed in 2004, and I couldn't even get a second to have it discussed. But we kept fighting on, and we kept moving on. And by 2007, we had enough people to bring it up for a vote. And by 2008, it passed by a 5-4 vote. And Mayor Ravensdahl vetoed it. And it died again. And we brought it back up again in 2009. And with the mayor's race in 2009, the mayor offered several amendments, some of which the judge decided today to throw out the limits, and it passed finally. What we ended up with was an important component of giving democracy a voice. When we allow unlimited contributions to influence political decision-making, we lose the ability of the people to run their own government. Campaign finance reform is the cornerstone of every democratic effort, and it has to be enforced. We have lost it. We took a step backwards today. We didn't have to do that, but we did. So now we have to move forward. The judge has ruled that there will be no limits. I intend to go by those rules, and I intend to later this year, as the Democratic nominee for mayor, push council to get that bill back and make sure that it doesn't have those amendments that Mayor Ravensdahl put in.
Just to be clear, you were a little more specific on this, Peduto, but I didn't hear anyone say that they would be inclined to follow self-imposed limits. Is that accurately reflecting what you said?
That offer was on the table today.
Okay.
In some more recent news, City Controller Michael Lamb has suggested eliminating the mayor's special fund in favor of a policy similar to other city employees, and that's in which the mayor can seek pre-approval and prepayment of expenses or get reimbursement later. This issue has always been in the news, more so with Mayor Ravensdahl these past several years. So while it can be slightly more of a cumbersome process, is this a policy something you would support if you were elected, and is it something you would be able to manage while in office? Or do you not see a problem with the current policy? We'll start with Mr. Wheatley.
First of all, I can make one promise. I will not need bodyguards to follow me to any meeting because I trust that I can handle myself as a former active Marine, and I feel that people are, by and large, not inclined to want to hurt their mayor in a physical sense. Second, under our state laws that I'm currently abiding by, for most expenses I pay out, and then those things that are reimbursable get reimbursed to me. I think that's a reasonable way to handle things. I think having independent controller processes that allow for that to be monitored, transparent, and accountable, we would be all for that. I mean, I think we need to reinstill trust in government again. I'm a former political science major and a graduate of Pitt in the Master's of Public Administration program. The one thing I truly believe in is the fact that democracy is one of our best forms, but in order for it to work, there's a give and take, and there's an enjoyment between those who we seek to serve and those who are serving. And so we have to have trust. We have to have a way for the process to work, so you know that your representatives aren't taking and stealing and misusing your funds, because once we lose that trust, we lose the ability to govern effectively. So yes, I will change the system, and I will pay first and get reimbursed.
Honest to God truth. I found out 2 months ago that the mayor had a credit card with a credit limit on it that never had to come to city council. And when I was asked by a reporter about it, I was both baffled and at the same time, I guess, not surprised. Whenever I have a community meeting, and it happens often, we run out of copies and somebody has to go over to Kinko's at 9 o'clock at night and make more copies, I hand them my credit card. And they take my credit card and they go and they make the copies, and they come back to the meeting and they hand me a receipt. I then have to write out an invoice about what it was for and staple the receipt to it. That's then presented to the city clerk. It comes up on a bill before city council where the public can see what I'm getting reimbursed for. We have a vote on it with all of council. It gets approved, sent down to the controller's office, and a check is cashed. Why the mayor has his own set of rules, I have no idea. But it's wrong. It's just simply wrong. And that any invoice, any expense, always should see the light of day. That's the best disinfectant to corruption, sunshine. And having the opportunity for people to know what is being spent would deter people from spending it for the wrong reasons. So what I'll do when I'm mayor, I'll take a pair of scissors and I'll cut that card up.
If I'm fortunate to be mayor, I'm going to have Jake Wheatley as my bodyguard. I've been in government 30 years, 10 in Pittsburgh City Council, 4 of those as council president, 10 as a state senator, 8 as a statewide elected official. I've never had a bodyguard, and I don't need one. Why we spend the monies we spend in the city of Pittsburgh like that, I'll never know.
Mr. Peduto, you want to go first?
Yep. Part of it comes during collective bargaining and how we do recruitment and how we do promotion. And that's something that I'm willing to work with the FOP on. During their collective bargaining agreements, I want a professionalized force, which means that we look at the same types of practices that other cities have. We used to have a diverse force, and we did up until about 10 years ago. And then since that time, all of the new hires have basically been white males, or the majority. And the same thing that we've seen within our fire bureau, and even to some extent EMS. Putting together a profile that allows for opportunities for others to come aboard through a professional management system is standard in other cities. I want that here. I also want the same thing for promotions, because we've started this practice where people can jump rank. And it's not about merit, it's about politics of how people can be getting promoted. I want to take that away and have it put back to the way it used to be. I want accreditation, which means that our police have to meet certain standards that other police forces are mandated to meet. And I want to be able to look not just within our own police force, but not to exclude them, but to look all over this country for who would be the best police chief. Because it's more than 600 people to find who would be the person that could bring both the morale of the police force up while at the same time being able to work with community.
Good police force begins with good leadership. Leadership first and foremost from the mayor in terms of picking the most professional chief of police that you can find. Yes, you should look first and foremost from within. Jake Wheatley is a Marine. I'm a Marine. I was a Marine infantryman in Vietnam. I know something about organizational structure. I know something about responsibility. That begins with the chief of police. If the need exists, I will have the chief of police report directly to the mayor. Today, that's a reporting relationship from the chief to the public safety director to the chief of staff to the mayor. We've heard nothing about that in all this controversy. That needs to change. There needs to be accountability. We need a police chief that's sensitive to the people of this city, to the student population, which has grown immensely and is a great asset for Pittsburgh, to the African American community, to the gay community of Pittsburgh. A police chief that can communicate and understand the issues. That begins first and foremost with the mayor. We have been a recruiting and training program for all the police programs throughout southwestern Pennsylvania. Police officers come to the city of Pittsburgh, they get trained for 6 months to a year, they work for 3 or 4, then they get a job at Upper St. Clair or Fox Chapel. That needs to change. We need to work within, we need to have good, internal, sensitive leadership in the city of Pittsburgh.
This is a question that I can't answer in 90 seconds because it's really a complex question. You asked two very complex questions. One, the morale question from the restructuring, and then one, how do you increase diversity? So I'm going to try to get it there. First of all, under our current position with our police under fire, the morale right now is very damaged. And not only from an external, but internally. Because I know for a fact, African-American officers in that department feel like they are under attack for something that happened with one individual. But they now have been labeled, displaced, removed from positions without cause, and no one is speaking towards that. Second, the way that you increase the diversity on the force is, one, you have to change the image and the relationship that the police have with the areas and communities that they want to be a part of the makeup. And we have a solution for that. You have to have some relationship building that goes beyond the law enforcement part, that you have some socializing experience that is positive. But you also have to get rid of some systematic things that are eliminating the possibility for African Americans to get on the force, and that's that 60 credit hour clause. I would change that. I would say we can recruit and you can get on the force as long as within your first 3 years on the force, you acquire the 60 credit hour limit. That way, those who are interested can come in the force and make it out. So thank you.
Thank you.
Certainly the interest is to serve everyone. And fairness has to be the priority in terms of how assignments of officers occurs. It's my understanding that there has been a priority given to certain officers for certain duties, off-duty assignments within the city of Pittsburgh. Obviously, if that's the case, there is an organizational problem. We have had one situation where an officer in a prominent position has held a full-time duty assistant chief of police position at a state university 40 miles from Pittsburgh. How you can hold two management jobs of that magnitude is beyond my understanding. It's not possible. Police officers have to be made available for duty in the event of emergencies in the city of Pittsburgh. I don't like to hear the reassignment of officers from neighborhoods when there's special events like a Steeler game or a Penguin game or certain duties in isolated areas of the city. This needs to be fair. It needs to be balanced in all neighborhoods of our city. Neighborhoods should see police officers continually during the day. Community-oriented policing is a good thing. The public wants to know that their officer is there when they need them, and that begins with a standard set by the mayor of the city of Pittsburgh. Thank you.
First, I think the current decision was an impulse decision that probably shouldn't have been made, in my opinion. I think it was a reactionary decision. I think all communities, all areas, all businesses deserve to have protection and the security that we offer to any other institution or agency or event. With that being said, I also believe when you talk about more policing in communities, you have to couple that with making sure there is some cultural competencies that those officers also understand, because you can't just throw more officers into communities and they not have the same frame of how to build, a positive relationship with those communities. And so as we talk about police, we have to really be serious. As we talk about all of our issues, we have to be really serious about what's going on. We can't continue the same old thing because we're going to get the same old thing back from it. And so, yes, I would agree that we need to have a new system of how we allocate our officers. And I definitely believe that all communities deserve to feel safe. And when the officer shows up, they feel safe and protected and not threatened. And I think the only way you do that is we have to change the culture in our police department from beginning to the end. And you have to do that with some aggression, but you have to do that with the understanding that not all officers are part of the problem, but the culture that we have under that circumstances is a problem.
Regarding blush, I don't know if we have the legal right to be able to tell a legal business that we provide a service to others that we cannot provide it to them. But I'm not a lawyer, and my lawyers were tied up in court today, so I'll ask them. On policing, I hope you guys understand this. So there is Pittsburgh Police that we all think about. The guys that are on the street and the gals that are on the street that protect us. And then there's this other thing that you never really think of, and it's Pittsburgh Police, Inc. And it is private details. It's the folks that you see at the bars on the south side, or at the Penguin games, or at different stores on Walnut Street, and they're wearing the Pittsburgh Police uniform. And that's an $8 million a year operation. And it is run by officers in order to be able to get additional salary for the salaries that they have that isn't as high as suburban areas. But it's also run in a way that it picks favorites, and people operate the system, and they get a little bit of the money for hiring certain people. Back several years ago, I tried to scrap that system. And working with 2 separate police chiefs and 2 separate mayors, tried to create a computer system that would be very transparent on who gets the details and how it operates. That got voted down in City Council 8-1 because of the power of the union to be able to control that. And that's just wrong. Because you know what happens when an officer decides to take that secondary detail? They're not taking the overtime where we need them. And on a Sunday, right here in Zone 4, we have 2 police officers who are on detail. One all the way out in West Mifflin by the county airport, and one in Oakland. And if that officer needs help, there's no one there to back them up. The system that is in place has to end. It has to end. It's part of that machine that we have to end to be the 21st century city.
First of all, I'm a supporter of our working class men and women. I tell people I grew up in a union household. My mother retired as a United Auto Worker, and they paid for my college, and they paid for the food that I ate on my table each and every day. But when we talk about our city government and our city financial situation, we have to be very honest with ourselves. Now, we need a livable wage, and we need to make sure the working men and women in this city have the ability to provide quality life for their families. We have to be very careful how we do that. And the reason why I'm saying it that way, because I'm also for expanding access to city government and its resources to small business owners, minorities and women and veteran-owned businesses. And so I don't want to put requirements that might stymie their ability to function and be supported and to help grow their families and their companies. As it relates to domestic partnerships, I think if we offer that benefit, which we should and do, for heterosexual partners, we should offer it for non-heterosexual partners. And that should be a requirement of how we do our business. And anyone who wants to do business with us, if they offer a service to their heterosexual employees, then it should be across the board. And that's what I would demand as mayor.
The benefits should be provided equally. Civil rights across the board, including lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community, including marriage, incidentally, which I have taken a position on. So those issues, I think, should be part of city government. Government is government. This government is not my government, it's your government. And equal rights should be applied across the board. The other part of the question, Jim, was
whether they could be opposed as prevailing wage legislation is.
Prevailing wage is something I support. Wherever government funding exists, there should be prevailing wage. And I'll tell you why. An iron worker is someone that is highly skilled and highly trained. The same with a boilermaker, the same with a carpenter, the same with a steamfitter. And if someone's climbing a building that's 50 stories high and there's public money in that project, prevailing wage should apply. So yes, I support it.
I wrote the bill on prevailing wage in the city of Pittsburgh, and I did it because it was the right thing to do. What we require is, if you're going to do a project in the city and you're saying, hey, I need some of your money to do this project, we say, hey, make sure that the people who are going to be working there aren't hurt. Make sure their industry isn't hurt. In other words, if you're going to build a hotel and you need a public subsidy to pay for that hotel, does it make sense to then hire the people who work in the hotel at a minimum wage where they need public assistance for housing, public assistance for food, public assistance for transit? Or does it make more sense to make sure that they're paid the average salary of everyone else that works in a hotel in the city of Pittsburgh? It's called triple bottom line economics, making sure that the project works for the developer, for the people who work in there, and the planet around it. And for the planet, we created laws on clean water and clean air. The first Clean Air Acts in the city of Pittsburgh in over 50 years, and the first Clean Water Act ever. And we made sure that whenever your money's being used for a public subsidy, that benefit doesn't just benefit the developer, it benefits the community. As far as domestic partners, I wrote the legislation for Councilman Dan Cohen on that too. And I did it because it was the right thing. Because if we offer benefits to some, we should offer benefits to all.
So this is a question from the audience, more focused on students. So recently there was a large fire in one of the Oakland apartments, and it left 13 students displaced, which thankfully the university was able to provide them resources and housing so they could, still go to school. So there's usually a lot of talk among Pittsburgh students here that maybe they could have better housing in their communities. So what would you do to ensure that Pittsburgh residences are safe and livable and meeting these standards? So we'll start with Councilman Peduto.
Sure. First off, great job if there's anybody here from SGB. The university got around those students, making sure they had clothing and food and shelter, and that's a community, right? That's what we try to strive for. There's a good program in Oakland that we've been working on the past couple of years called Oak Watch. And Oak Watch is the eyes and the ears of the community, making sure that we're going after the most egregious examples of absentee landlords. There's a bill that I introduced last year called Operation Red, because a lot of times the court cases and the BBI citations aren't enough. We use an old-fashioned tool called shame. And we put the name of that landlord up in a big red sign with their home address and their home phone number, so people can call and let them know what it's like to have to live next door to something like this. And there's another thing that we need to do, which is our Bureau of Building Inspection. And we need to be aggressive in making sure that every home meets the standards that are required by law. There has been, and I've seen it over the past 10 years, a series of people who have decided to come into Oakland and look at these properties as ATMs, to see how many students they can jam into them, and then to put no money back into the property itself. They'll be one of my first targets, and they'll be getting a personal call from me, just the same way that I do in my district when people try and do that kind of crap.
I think on the last point that he raised is the most important though. I think we as a city, we need to really invest our resources into our DBI. And I actually think that we should grow that because of a couple of reasons. One, it helps facilitate our economic engine, processing, permits, and so on and so forth in our departments. But also, it would allow for us to really enforce our codes and to work with those landowners. Again, I'm from the perspective of you at least try to negotiate, not from negative, but from positive, ways of incentivizing those owners to reinvest in their properties in Oakland and all throughout neighborhoods, because it's not just an Oakland problem. You see this in many of our neighborhoods. And so I would really concentrate on how we do BBI, how we support it, how we invest in it, and then have them go and be aggressive in their stewardship of our codes and our enforcement, and working with our landowners, our retail owners, to make sure they're investing and reestablishing safe housing and not taking advantage of our students and of our needy citizens who are looking for affordable places to stay.
I know we've been tough on some aspects of public safety, but generally speaking, we have high-quality public safety personnel here at the University of Pittsburgh and the City of Pittsburgh. And this recent fire is one such example, with the police, with the firefighters, with the paramedics responding in a very professional way. And that's all a good thing and something that I think we can build on and should build on. But at the same time, thank them occasionally for the great work that they do. There's no doubt, and Bill's right, that building inspection in the City of Pittsburgh needs to be upgraded. And guess where it needs to begin first? With leadership, with a full-time director that doesn't exist today. We have to put responsibility somewhere. We have a building inspection department that reports to the Director of Public Safety, but we have no one with full-time accountability. It's about time we change that and get a professional in that position. And the third factor in terms of housing is to have a mayor that can lobby with your chancellor, Mark Nordenberg, in Harrisburg, to keep funding for education here at the University of Pittsburgh and the 4 state-relateds and the 14 state-owned universities, and also to lobby for additional capital resources to build more student housing as part of the university. That needs to be a partnership between the mayor and the chancellor.
I was always taught, never assume, so I'm going to ask. I'm running for the mayor of Pittsburgh, of the City of Pittsburgh, and I would really ask for your support. And we have said all along that this is a campaign that we're calling the People's Campaign. One of my mentors, when I first was elected 10 years ago, had a motto, a statement, "Through us they speak." And what I learned from that is we are the eyes, the ears, and the voice of those who we choose to serve. I have been honored to represent the 19th Legislative District for 10 years, but it goes beyond me. This election is about you, your families, and your neighbors. We believe in the statements that we have made that we will only progress when all citizens, all neighborhoods feel fully participating or feel like they're fully participated in their government and in the direction of their future. We believe our campaign allows people to do that. We haven't been a career politician, nor do we want to. I've always talked about the fact that this is about serving people. It has never been about me. I have never surrounded myself and built myself to be an institution, nor do I want our city government to be looked at as owned by someone other than the people. So I would hope that you heard something tonight that sparked your interest, and that you will look deeper into the things that you hear and challenge those things that have been said, and look to be a full participant in the future of your city. Thank you.
Pittsburgh is a great city. It's a city that's been rated the most livable city 3 times in the last 30 years. That is truly significant. And I believe that's because we have great corporations, we have great labor groups, we have great universities, the University of Pittsburgh, CMU. We have good nonprofits, UPMC, West Penn Allegheny. We have great foundation community, as good as anywhere in the country. We have great neighborhoods and people who care. You wouldn't be at this event tonight if you didn't care. But we do have one entity that's lagging behind, and that's city government. A city government that hasn't figured out how to fix its own problems. A city government that doesn't have good leadership, just not at the top, but in the organizational structure. Many parts of it are not even organized. It's antiquated in how it interacts with the public in many different ways. That has to change. It needs a leader. It needs someone who has led things before. I've been your Auditor General of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We fix program after program after program in state government based on our recommendations. I want to do the same in the city of Pittsburgh. We deserve a better city government. And that is done by electing someone with leadership capabilities. I would be honored to be your mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for moderating. Thank you to WPTS, the Progressive FM, for putting this together. You know, it's going to be interesting because we're going to be together almost every night for about the next 50 days, and we won't see each other's family as much as we see each other. And Jack is somebody who I worked with in 1993, worked for in 1993. Jake was one of the first people when I was first elected that I supported because I knew that he was the fresh voice that we needed to run for state representative. So it's different, you know. And the question is, why am I running, and why would I be different than two good men? I think it's about my past and my present and the future of this city. My past is solidly ingrained in Pittsburgh. Like I told you before, it is the story of Pittsburgh. But over these past 19 years, I've got to be a part of the transformation of what has occurred. And it's a great transformation. But it hasn't happened everywhere, and it needs to. Because I believe that this city can be a place where people want to live. I believe this city can be a place where businesses want to work here. And I believe this city can be a place that we can grow an economy so that students don't have to find somewhere else around the country in order to do the jobs that they believe in. I believe that we can create affordable housing so you don't have to rent, but you can own within the first 5 years and raise a family and start to rebuild within the borders of the city of Pittsburgh. And what we've put together in this campaign is a new coalition. It's new people, not the people that have been around that table for so many years, but the people at the card table. And I'm asking you to be a part. Join with us. Let's change this city.
Mr. Wagner, Mr. Peduto, taking the time out of your evening to come and talk to Pitt students. Now I'm going to turn it over to Tom Bisco, who's going to say.
Yeah, just thanks again to the moderators for joining us, and thanks for all the candidates for coming. This was a fantastic debate, and I also think it says something very profound about undergraduates' abilities to affect and participate in the political process. So thank you, all of you, for joining us tonight. We hope you all have a great night, and like you, we will be paying attention to this election until May. So have a good one, everyone.